5 common mistakes hot yoga teachers make in class. Mastering communication. It's all about communication. Now, it really can apply to all types of yoga, but I happen to be an expert at hot yoga, so let's talk about it. Now, the 5th is by far the most common mistake, so make sure you watch the video all the way to the end because you don't want to miss the 5th one. So let's get started. Number 1, timing. Your timing must be consistent. So if you're a Bikram teacher, in the manual, you should know exactly how long each yoga posture is. In the Barkan method manual, I tell you right there in the manual exactly how long each posture should be. But if you've been doing yoga class for a long period of time, Bikram class, the Barkan class, you should have an internal clock and understand how long these postures should be held. And when the students know that you're consistent, they will trust you, because if you're not consistent, they're just going to give up.
Okay, I give up.
They're just going to stop working in the pose. Now, there are exceptions. Let's say you start coaching somebody, you want to start to motivate somebody, or you want to start to maybe do a countdown because the posture is about to be over, and I don't suggest doing countdowns all the time. On a rare occasion, you can do a countdown, but when the students trust that your timing is consistent, they're going to work a lot harder for you, but more importantly for themselves. Now, before we continue on, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell. You get notified when I post a new video, and make sure to smash the like button. You want to learn all about hot yoga, tutorials, flows. Hit the subscribe button and the like button right now. So we're still on tip number 1. If you've been coming to yoga class for a long period of time, pay attention to the timing from the senior teachers, because they pretty much know the timing. Hopefully they have the timing down. If you don't have a yoga class, you can sign up for the Barkan Method on-demand membership. I put links down in the description below. Listen to how I teach. I'm very consistent. All my students will tell you I'm very consistent in my timing. Therefore, they know exactly how long they're going to hold the pose for, because this is a really important equation. Less in the beginning, more at the end. When they know there's only 5 seconds left to do the pose, they're going to work a lot harder. And sometimes your voice can reflect that. So let's say you're doing half moon back bend. Reach back, all the way back, a little bit more, hips forward, all the way back at the end. They know there's only 5 seconds left in that pose. They're going to work all the way to the end. But if you just say, reach back, push your hips forward, come up, all of a sudden, whoa, it was just this dramatic ending. It was too quick of an ending. You didn't give them enough time for them to understand that the posture's almost over, so they can work harder at the end of that pose. Tip number 2, you're not just memorizing words, memorizing a script, what Bikram calls the dialogue. You have to understand, what do those words mean? You want to dive into the intricacies of the pose. When we're saying reach your arms to the right in half moon, for example, push your hips to the left, that's an opposite direction. The only way you're going to get the body to move properly, to extend in that pose, is to create that opposite direction. That's something that's important for you to understand. If you're just memorizing a script, and this is what happens in the Bikram world, they give you words to memorize, and in the teacher training program, you just have to get every single word down. I think even if you leave the word and or the out of your presentation, you have to start over.
Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me?
Which makes me nuts. In the Barkan world, we're a little different. In the Barkan world, I have the bullet points that must be addressed, but I want you to calculate your own words. In the beginning, it's a little harder, but once you get into it, now you're able to get into a groove and find your authentic voice. And by the way, if you're interested in becoming a Barkan 200-hour teacher, to be certified to be a yoga teacher, I put links down in the description below. We have live trainings and online trainings. In fact, the online trainings, you could start tomorrow if you put the application in. And if you are already a teacher, most likely you are if you're watching this video, I have a 300-hour certification, which is also online and live as well. So I put links in the description below. Apply for the teacher training program. We'd love to have you join the family. Mistake number 3, people do not encourage enough or correct enough. Let's go to encouragement first, because that's really important. You see a student doing something that's really well, or you see them progressing in your class, improving, let them know. You have to give them that little nudge. You can say, okay, Mary, you're really doing amazing. I can't believe the improvement I've seen. Or if we're in the pose, you can say, wow, that's so much better. When you start giving them that encouragement, it changes everything. Actually, adrenaline will go through the body, and they'll actually work harder in the pose. And guess what? There's nobody that does it better than Bikram. When I opened my studio in Florida, I'd come back to LA all the time, 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a year. And I would take class with Bikram, and Bikram would always show me off to his students. I'd be doing standing head to knee, and I'd hold it for the entire time. And at the end of the pose, I'd be in that perfect position. He goes, look Look at that. That's 25 years of discipline. You don't think that's going to make you feel like $1 million? It does. Now I can hold the posture for 30 seconds longer. Do that to your students. Build them up. Let them know how wonderful they're doing. That's something I have to work on with my own teaching because sometimes I correct more than encourage. But encouraging your students will go a long way. Which now brings us to part 2 of tip number 3 of the mistake number 3, and that's correction. When you see students that are off position, off alignment, make correction. A lot of times the new students will only address students that are doing something they don't like they're taking water when they shouldn't be taking water. They pump up the discipline in the class. I'm saying do that within the pose. You see that the leg is too low? Tell them to bring the leg up. The shoulder is too crunched. Tell them to extend the shoulders away from them. In the Barkan online teacher training program, we have live sessions every Thursday afternoon. People log in from all over the world. It's a really cool experience. And at the end of that session, I post pictures, usually from the 26 and 2, and we play the game. What's wrong with this picture?
Sounds really cool.
I find pictures from the internet where alignment is inaccurate, or sometimes where alignment is actually perfect, and I say, okay, what's wrong with this picture? So that, not that we're picking apart people and making people wrong, that we're showing what the proper alignment is and how you can then implement that into your classroom. Now, at the same time, you don't want to come into your classroom and start picking people apart. I mean, I can do that because I've been teaching for over 44 years. There's an art to it, and one way of doing it is to encourage first and then throw in the correction. But when you're correcting people, it makes all the difference. They're going to improve. They're going to then connect with you as a teacher, and that makes all the difference. Mistake number 4, and that's the teachers don't keep up with their yoga practice, especially if they start teaching on a regular basis on the schedule. If you're teaching 6, 7, you get into 10, 11 classes a week, a lot of times they just don't have time for their own practice, and I think that's a big mistake because your practice is your superpower. When you understand in your own body what it's like to do the class, it makes all the difference in the world. To give up your practice, you're giving up the foundation of what you're doing, and you're not practicing what you preach. Now, when I opened my studio in 1983, January 20th, 1983 was the first day of my class. I was teaching 6 classes a day, which was insane. Eventually, I went down to 5 classes a day, and I was teaching every single class. Back in the old days, Bikram and I taught every class. At the 9 a.m. class, I would do the class with them. Now, in the Bikram world and in the Barkan world, we have full-length mirrors, which is, by the way, is not necessarily shared by other styles of yoga. The Ashtanga world, the Iyengar world, they don't have big mirrors. So therefore, I could do the practice with them and still be peripheral. That's how I really learned how to correct, because I could see people from the different angles. However, you got to be careful not to get into a tunnel vision. Now, I'm not saying you should do that every class. And vinyasa is a little different. In the Barkan world, we have a hot vinyasa class as well as a hot yoga class. In the vinyasa world, sometimes doing the postures with them can help build the energy and create more energy. But at the same time, you still have to be peripheral. That's why we have that front mirror. You still need to be knowing what your students are doing, understanding what's going on in the room, reading the room so you can continue to encourage and continue to correct, which goes back to the last tip. But if you're teaching a Bikram class or you're teaching the Hot Yoga Barkan class, then I suggest you step back, watch. Maybe you want to start the pose with them, do a little bit with them. But regardless, you got to cowboy up and do your own practice. In fact, when students see you in the classroom taking somebody else's class, it's very inspiring to them. Mistake number 5, and this is the last one, which is the most important one, which is definitely the biggest mistake that yoga teachers make.
Wait for it. Wait for it.
Not just in the hot yoga world, not just Bikram, Barkan, but any type of yoga. And that is they get into a repeated pattern of speech. They go into what I call the teacher voice. What we have to do in a yoga class consistently is to have variety of tone. This is something that I work on with all my teacher training people that take my trainings, live trainings, and online. I help you to find what I call the conversation voice. Now, in the Bikram world, it can be very strict. People want to just stick to what they call the dialogue, even though it's really a monologue. I always get on Bikram for that. Bikram, it's not a dialogue. Dialogue is 2 people talking. Then people argue, well, it's a dialogue between you and the student, or you or them in their own practice. No. You can rationalize it all you want. It's a monologue, especially in Bikram's teaching. There's nobody talking back to Bikram.
That's for darn sure.
It's not 2 people talking. It's not a dialogue. But if you want to call it the dialogue, go ahead and call it the dialogue. People say, well, how can I break the pattern in the dialogue? Find something in that pose that's important, what I call the gem. What's important? It doesn't have to be the most important thing. And you want to say that in different tones. So maybe say you have to memorize the script. In the Bikram world, you have to say it exactly. Hands, palms together. Again, I say Bikram. There's no other palm in the body. Just palms together is fine. But he says hands, palm together. You go, push your hands, palms together. opposed to hands, palms together. Put your hands palms together. You can exaggerate the way it sounds. And when you can go into a conversation voice, now this is why you have to do it. This is why it's so important. Now you're going to get the student's ear. For example, let's say we're doing back to half moon pose. Arms overhead, interlace the fingers, stretch your body to the right, push your hips to the left. That's my teacher voice. I got to break that pattern. How am I going to break it? As we reach over to the right, your left heel has a tendency to come off the floor. So push your heel into the ground. What that's going to do is going to give you leverage so you can extend more. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen not what I'm saying, but listen to how I'm saying it. I broke the pattern. And when you break the pattern, that's when you get your student's ear. And that, again, is big because that's going to make all the difference. So let's sum it up. Mistake number 1, time. You've got to be consistent so your students will trust you. And when they trust you, they're going to work to their full potential. Mistake number 2, you're just memorizing a script and you're very scripted. We want to get off script. We want to understand the intricacies of the pose, from beginning modifications to advanced amplifications. So we're not just muttering out words. We know what the words mean and we have the subtext behind those words. It makes all the difference. Mistake number 3 is not encouraging or correcting your students. You've got to encourage them. You got to make them feel like $1 million. Sometimes you might be lying. Sometimes you might be telling a white lie. Oh, you're doing so wonderful in class, maybe because it's a beginner. But you want to push them up. You want to get them going. You want to encourage them, and it's going to make them feel like $1 million. And at the same time, on the other side of that coin is the correction. Their leg is down too low and standing hip to knee. They're going to hurt their back. Get them up. Make that correction. Mistake number 4. They're not keeping up their own practice. You've got to keep up your own practice. That's the heart and soul of what you're doing. People say I do yoga because I want to help other people. I want to share what's helped me so much. Well, what's helped you is the practice. Don't give up your practice. Don't give up your superpower. And mistake number 5, they're in a repeated pattern of speech. We've got to break that pattern. We got to find that conversation tone. We have to also have variety of tone. You're not going to talk the same way in balancing stick. It's really balancing staff pose. The literal translation is balancing staff, not balancing stick. You're not going to talk the same way in balancing stick as you are in Shavasana. It's not Savasana, by the way, Shavasana. It's a different tone. We have a Shiva energy. We have a Shakti energy. We need to reflect that energy, variety of tone, conversation voice, and I can help you find that voice in my teacher training program. Apply down on the links below. So that's our episode for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the like button. Any comments, questions, or frustrations, put them down below. I'm happy to get back to you, and I thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next video. Bye, guys.